So for this is the last information you're going to get this year, but I really wanted you to have this lesson in front of you. This is the last session, obviously, but I really wanted you to have this this information because if you're working with classes, which now we are starting to work with classes, and working with classes is something that we're going to be doing next year as well. I want you to be familiar with how some of these aspects of classes work. And hopefully today will clarify a couple things, and they'll also make you wonder about a couple things. Now, this does say in your console, type these things. All right, and what I want to do is I want to see if I can actually, I'm going to go back here for a second. And I'm going to see if we can do this in a separate window, and I can bring it over and show you. So just looking at it, I'll type it up, but just looking at it, what do you think this code is going to do?
Oh, this is another little exercise from yesterday's scenes, huh?
You can respond in the chat or unmute. What do you guys think it's going to do? Nothing?
I'm typing, sir. Geez, give me a minute.
No. I said don't type it. I said just look at the code. I'm typing it up.
I think they're gonna like tell the time on like on a 24-hour clock, I guess. Wait, hold up. It's gonna like show the hour, the minutes, and the seconds on a 24-hour clock format.
No. All right, there we go. That's better. All right, so something about displaying time on a 24-hour clock. So here's the code. I didn't put that comment in. Comments and 3 quotes just are ways of documenting your functions. So we see here in line 3, or actually line 1 is making a class. Line 3 is initializing that class. You see that there are 3 arguments, hour, minutes, and seconds. It is creating 2 objects. One object where the time is 5:32, another object where the time is 23:11 and 11 seconds. And then it's printing those 2 objects. So Julio thinks it's going to print time. Let's see what happens. So here's what happens. Now, David probably has a better idea of what this means because we talked about memory and addresses right here. We talked about memory and addresses and how the CPU works and all that stuff at the beginning of the year. So you have an idea that that is referring to a piece of memory of RAM, all right? That's referring to some address in RAM where that object is located. So what it's doing is it's saying that time 1 is in the main memory space, and it's located at this address in memory. And time 2 is in the main memory space and located in this address in memory. I don't expect you to have any understanding of what that actually refers to at this point. I just want to translate that for you. What it means is when it prints out time 1 and time 2, that does us no good. It does not help us at all. And the reason it doesn't help us at all is because it's not printing in a human readable format, all right? But we do want it to be in a human readable format, right? We want to be able to see what time it's actually referring to. So what we need to do is we need to change something about this code in order to make it human readable. All right, so let's take a simpler example first. So we did this last week, we did this, what, Monday? Where we had a class, and then we could add a method to our class. So this make noise, where it's able to print out something that makes sense, that makes it human readable, all right? And I'm gonna go back to our code and let's make a method that makes this human readable. So we're gonna make a method inside of this class. How do we write a method? What do we write to make a method?
Go back to the other slide, please.
What do we write to make a method or a function?
Wait, a function.
A method or a function? What do we do to create a method or a function? A method is a function within a class. This class time already has a method called underscore init underscore. So what keyword in Python do we use to define a function or a method?
Def.
Okay, so def, and then we want to print the time. So what do we want to call this method?
Okay, got it. Def time.
The class is already called time, right?
I guess. Mm-hmm.
We can call it anything we want, right? Let's be clear. I can call it this. I just have to, type this every time I want to actually print the time. Let's make it something that's easy to remember. All right, I'm going to do print time, and the only argument is going to be self. Remember, in any method, I don't know who you are. I don't know why you're calling me. In any method, self will always be the argument. It will always be the first argument, because that is the object itself. So in order to print out the time, what do I want to write? In order to print out the time, what do I want to write?
And not self.
Julio and Milo, chime in at any time.
Please help me. Jesus. Yeah, I know I'm a bit fried for these things. Wouldn't it be print self hour, that hour?
Good, so that will print the current hour, right?
Same thing for the minutes and seconds?
The current time is self.hour. Okay.
So self.minutes plus self.seconds.
That works. Okay. Now, one thing to pay attention to here. I mean, this will work, right? So let's take a look. And instead of saying print time 1 and print time 2, or in addition to, let's say time 1. Now, how do we call the print time method off of this object?
No, not so. No.
We have the time 1 object. How do we call the print time method?
Look.
So Julio, that's a good way to think about it. Go ahead. That's how we normally call a function. But with methods, what we do is we do dot and then the method name.
All right.
Now replit helps you at every step, right? It's saying print time self, and it's telling you what that method name is called. We don't actually have to put self in here. Self automatically gets sent because what it does, this print time takes this object that it's attached to and puts this as the first argument. So that will print the time for time 1, and this should print the time for time 2. So let's see how that works. There's a problem.
Okay, now you knew that was going to happen.
So what's the problem? What does it say?
Facebook, yada. Maybe line 9 is where the problem is. So, and then it's type error can only come.
Concatenate.
Okay. Also, say, how do you read that word? String int.
So what do we need to do? That's an integer. Self.hour is an integer, and we want it to be a string. So how do we turn it into a string?
We make it we put parentheses at the beginning of print strs and another parentheses.
So we're actually going to cast, right? We're going to cast each of these.
All right.
Right? And I'll show you a shortcut in a minute here. So this seems unnecessary to do all this casting and all this just to print out hour, minutes, and seconds, but let's take a look.
Haha, there we go.
Oh, that looks pretty good, right? No leading zeros, but whatever, right? We're not in it for the precision here, but it gives us the current time. Cool. So let's see if we can't tighten this up a little bit. So here's where I want you to start to think about all these different things that you've learned about Python. We know about lists. Okay? We know that we can make a list and we can do things with those lists. Wow, I don't have the join. Never mind. All right, forget that.
Phew.
Let's just keep it simple. There's a couple more things that we can do with this, but let's keep it simple. So if we're just printing the time, then we don't need these anymore. Okay. But let's hold on to that for a second because you'll see how to make it even more straightforward. So we just did this, but we did this for time, where we made it human readable. Okay, so this prints out the noise that the particular pet makes. All right, and what we saw is we saw all this mess. We saw the addresses print out as opposed to something human readable. And ultimately, this is what we want to have print out. So there's another method that we can use. It's called the underscore str method, all right? Or just, you can say the str method. Just understand there's 2 underscores before and 2 after. It's another one of the Python special methods like init. And what it does is it returns a representation in string format for the object automatically. So anytime that we try to cast an object as a string, it will automatically look for this method on the class in order to produce the string. So this is a template starter code for the str method. So let's start to use that here. Def underscore str, and it even has it as an option. We need that self to be the first argument. And we need to return a string. Well, we have a string right here that we already created. So let's return that string. Okay, so I'm returning the current time is with the hour, the minute, and the second. And let's see what happens. Now, when it does this print, it automatically goes to this str method because it's trying to turn it into a string, and it does this part. So we don't even have to call any sort of other method like this down here. We just have to print like we normally would print any other object in Python out, and it will tell us exactly what we want, which is what the current time is. This is a way of customizing your classes to make them do exactly what you want to. Now, this is another way of printing this out with more precision. And I'm going to walk you through this to make sure that you understand how this works. So instead of writing that, here's what we're going to write, is we're going to use single quotes.
Sorry, I died.
The percent sign, and then some parentheses. This is the general format for printing out formatted strings. This percent sign means replace everything in the string that starts with a percent sign with the following variables. I'll type that out so you can be looking at it the whole time. Replace everything in the string that starts with a percent sign with the following variables in this order. So we are going to start with a %.2d. All right, that's telling us that we want to have, go ahead. Were you saying something?
Who, me?
Yeah.
No, I wasn't.
Okay.
I just said that I'm sorry that I died for a little bit, but that's it.
So what this is saying is that we want to have 2 digits after the decimal point. All right, I'm sorry, just 2 digits, rather. So right now, this is just printing out the hour. Okay, so this, all you need to know for right now is that this is printing out a formatted number with 2 digits, and that variable is self.hour. So let's now add a colon, because we want a colon to separate hour and minute. And let's do the same thing, a 2-digit number. And the next number is going to be self.minute. And we run it, and we see now that it says 0532 and 2311. Let's now add the seconds, colon, percent, 0.2d, self.second. And now we have the full time printed out without having to have this whole print time function going on. We can get rid of that now. And this is very, very, very compact, right? And in fact, I can say the current time is, and have it look the same way that it did before.
But it's just easier than just putting string after string in every one. I mean, in every one of them.
Yeah, it automatically casts it as a string, and it gives a particular format, right?
Right. So, have you told them about these types of stuff to them, to the 10th graders?
I'm telling them now.
Well, I mean, besides now.
Nope.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of. It's for this type of stuff. It's a lot of shortcuts that you need. I mean, it's better. Make your code more efficient.
Yep. So you see that, if I bump up this number, you see that it puts more leading zeros, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that tells us how many digits long that particular number is going to be. There are all sorts of different things that you can do. I don't think that's even gonna, there we go. So that won't add any leading zeros. There's lots of different things you can do with this print format. In any case, the bottom line here is that you can customize how things print out in your code, which is ultimately going to be how you do debugging. This is how you're going to find errors in your code. You're going to have to be able to print out the information that is in objects in order to be able to see what's going on with this object at some point. The final method I want to introduce you to is the add method. All right, this is another special method that allows us to define what a plus sign does, a plus operator for a class does. Using the add method to redefine the plus operator is known as what is called operator overloading. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to define an add method for adding 2 times together. So I'm going to say this second time is equal to this second time variable. Oh, what?
Was that supposed to happen, or is this like an actual
Oh, that was not supposed to happen.
Oh, okay.
Oh, good. I didn't lose too much. All right. So I'm going to have the second time variable. And what I want to do is I want to add hours, minutes, and seconds together to come up with a new time. So here's how that's going to work. Is I want the current hour, right, to be added to the second time hour, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want the current minute to be added
Second
to
time.
second time minute. And I want the current second to be added to second time second. Now, I'm going to make a new object. And this is not something that I would expect you to come up with on your own. I'm just showing you a whole process for doing this. I'm going to make a new object called new time. And it's actually what I'm going to be returning. Sorry. I'm going to be returning a new time object because I don't want to change the current one. And so I'm going to save all of these into new variables. I'm going to have new hour, new minute, new second. But right now it doesn't like me. It's underlining everything because I haven't used those variables yet. And with the new hour, new minute, and new second, let's give myself some room here. With the new hour, new minute, and new second, I will use those to create a new time object that will be the sum of the hours, minutes, and seconds of both times that I'm adding together. So I should be able to add time 1 and time 2 together. Now it added the seconds, the minutes, and the hours. Obviously, that doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense to be 28 hours, right? So we would probably have to have another method in here to be able to say, oh, it's been like 1 day, 5 hours, 43 minutes, 11 seconds, something like that. But I want you to understand that Python is very customizable. So that if you have your own classes and you want to do something like add, Python doesn't know how to add 2 times together. You created this class. It doesn't know what add means, but you can tell Python what add means for these classes. And then it will automatically say, when you do this plus, it will go, okay, I'm going to call plus, I'm going to call add on this time 1 object. And my second argument is time 2. It puts time 2 into second time, gets the hour, minute, and second off of time 2, adds everything up, puts it in these 3 variables, and then returns a new time object with all of those variables. This kind of programming is called object-oriented programming and can make your programming life so much easier. It can allow you to be the laziest programmer that ever programmed. Only if you know all the shortcuts, only if you know how to do all these things. Notice that if I take away this comment, that I could actually make this code even more compact. I could get rid of these lines and put them all in this line. I've got all of like 10 lines of code here, and it's doing a lot. So it's all about using really smart programming to not have to like duplicate your work. Just do things once, and then you can do it time and time and time again. All right? Literally.
Wow, I just noticed that.
I don't even know what's going to happen. But there we go. I just added time 1 plus time 1 plus time 2 plus time 2. And I didn't have to define what all that meant. I just defined this add method.
So like the add method kind of like defines everything already?
For doing any addition, yep.
Oh, okay.
And notice
Well, hence the name, of course.
Notice how there are all these different things that you can define, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look at all these different things, greater than or equal to,
Look at All these
less
chickens.
than or equal to, less than, not equal to. All right, there's all sorts of things that we can define in Python that will automatically make a change to how the class behaves. So take take the last, so Julio and Milo take the last 15 minutes, work on whatever replit you need to work on. David and I are going to talk IA, and if we get done earlier than 15 minutes, then I'll head over and help you with your replets. But feel free to help each other out, and I will catch up with you guys when I can. If not, I'll just catch up with you guys in physics. So, David.
I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want to hear. No, no, no. Give it away from me. No. I don't want it. Te reprendo, Satanás. I have to go full Spanish mode on this.
No me importa.
No, I know the fact that you don't care either way because you know it. Some of it at least.
So what I did, David, is I posted several things for the IA, including a sample video. And I think I might have shown you this at the beginning of the year. I think I showed something like this at the beginning of the year, having to do with a sample IA video so that you had an idea of what the IA was like. But the IA video is like a 6 or 7 minute video demonstrating how your program works, where you narrate through the whole thing and you talk about very specific aspects of the program. The written portion of the IA is just as long as the ESS one. Because this is a 2-year class, then the expectations for the IA are higher. So you notice that this student is talking about, they start right in. They say, hey, here's my client. My client is a librarian at the school, and she told me about some of the problems that she has with the system, and she asked for me to design a system for basically magazines coming into the library, keeping track of the magazines, right? And so the reason why I want you to see this is like, well, that seems like a really reasonable thing. You know, this isn't overly complex. We've done projects like that where we're keeping track of an inventory, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want you to think that the problem that you have to solve or the client that you need to find has to be some crazy, like, you know, business person out in the middle of Cleveland who has this really crazy idea, right? It doesn't have to be anything complicated. You're trying to solve a real life problem for someone who typically you already know, okay? Then they go over why this solution? Why did I choose this solution and not some other solutions? And so they're talking about a variety of different technologies in here. Like, I chose not to use this one. I did choose to use this technology, and here's why. All right. Now, something we did for ESS is we did talk about, or personal project, you talked about what the criteria were that would define your success with personal project. Well, that comes full circle here. You're saying, what are going to be the criteria that I'm going to meet if this project is a success, if this particular IA is successful? So you are going to say, here are all the features that I want to make sure I have. And then there are some diagrams, and we'll go over how to make these diagrams. Okay, it's really not difficult to make these diagrams. There's all sorts of programs that will do the heavy lifting for you. You will diagram your actual program, which will have multiple files in it. All right, and this is a way of visualizing programs and variables and classes and stuff like that. It seems a lot more complicated than it is when you're actually making a program. For example, the program that I just wrote for the lecture would likely look like this. It had multiple objects and it had inheritance and several other things happening. So it doesn't take very much to have a pretty complex looking diagram for a program. So this is walking through, what's that?
I can tell. It's complex. Jesus.
So this is walking through the code. It's walking through the database. You do not have to have a database, but we can talk about how to make one if you do. You see that there's a test plan, what you need to test, how you're going to test it. And that has to do with your criteria for success. This is a schedule that you're putting together for yourself. Like, when did I do such and such? When did I accomplish these pieces? Notice that they started in August and they finished in January, right? So that's why this is kind of the schedule I want you guys to be on. So by the time August rolls around, you're already like, I know pretty much what I want to do. I've already spoken with my client, or maybe I have an idea about who my client should be, and I can get the ball rolling and start with my IA. This is obviously much more technical than the ESS. ESS was much more broad overview. This goes into every single step of what you're doing. All right. So there's a lot here. But all of these things mostly write themselves once you've got your program written. It's making sure that you understand all the different aspects and you didn't just like write a program without any consideration of input, output, anything else like that. You're going to narrate your video and you'll write out that script. So that's this piece right here is basically, if you watch the video, they're saying all of this. It's just written out at this point. And I think there's a last piece. Yeah, just talking about the success criteria here and recommendations for the future improvements. So that's pretty easy section to write. And this is a transcript of the interview with the client. So you want to record your interview with the client. You don't want to just have it and just be like, okay, I have a good idea. You want to actually record it so that you can write the transcript of that interview with the client. That is a required part of the ESF, of the IA. So what I want you to understand from this is that the project itself, what you're trying to solve is simple. The level of detail that you need to go into is complex. So you can totally write this program. You have to be detail oriented. You have to go into detail with how you're actually doing every step of it. You have to document every step of it. You can't just sit here and be like, yeah, I'll do that next week. You have to have a schedule. You have to follow that schedule. I am more than happy to help you at every step of the process. There are other people who are more than happy to help you. You can reach out to Mr. Andrew Kanish, for example. There are other mentors I can hook you up with to help you with the programming part. But I want you to make sure that you are doing your piece, your first piece of this, which is figuring out which clients you can make contact with, and what problems you can actually solve. To that end, what I've also posted for you is this. Oh, what? That's wrong. I totally have access to that. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it'll pop up over there. There we go. So here is a guide for how to make sure that you are getting how you are writing your project with appropriate complexity. This is something that I'll go over next year. But we've talked about recursion. We've talked about how to add data and how to delete data. We've talked about, let's see. We've talked about arrays of 2 or more dimensions. And we've talked about these abstract data types. So you are required to have 10 total aspects in order to get marks for complexity in your program to be sufficiently complicated. And we've already talked about 1, 2, 3, what did I say? 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. We've already talked about 8 of them. So you've at least been exposed to 8 aspects of complexity, and we will be layering on more aspects of complexity as we go along. I also have listed how to be successful in each of these criteria, in each of A, B, C, D, and E on your IA. It lists exactly what you need to do for each of those. All of these links are other teachers' pages so that you have a good idea of what are acceptable IAs. There's even some checklists for you to make sure that you're doing exactly what you need to. This is kind of your summer reading. This is kind of what I want you to go through to make sure that what you're planning on doing meets all these criteria and that you've got a good idea of, hey, here's what I need to do, right? Because this planning piece is hugely important. Am I already out of time? Almost.
Oh yeah, well, you have 5 minutes. Two.
Morning, David.
Morning. Who else is in here?
So,
Oh.
David,
Yes.
all that being said, what ideas do you have so far for your IA?
That is exactly what I was gonna ask.